they made that risk assessment. But it certainly was brought up that it was a risk. I mean, the Tropicana Field roof itself came up in that meeting. I mean, watching it back now in, November, knowing what's happened, I mean, it just did not age well. There was.
You are Locked On Rays, your daily Tampa Bay Rays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, Ulises, it's been a minute since we've had a special guest on the program, and this one hit it out of the park. Gabriella Paul from WUSF News.
We had a terrific time with her, and now you guys are going to learn a little bit more about insurance coverage, what's going on with the Trop, with City Council, and much, much more. So without further ado, here's the interview with Gabriella Paul.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Rays podcast, and today we have a very special guest. That is Gabriella Paul. She is a reporter for WUSF News. Gabriella, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Let's get started with numbers. I'm the resident Excel connoisseur, so let's start with a little bit of numbers walking here. Okay, so there was an $100 million insurance. It was lowered to $25 million. The deductible is $22 million, which then, if the total is $56 million, the city should pay at least $31 million. Is that around what is going on right now, Gabriella?
Yeah, so as the fellow resident data nerd at WUSF, I've spent a lot of time with these numbers as well. And how that breaks down, I mean, you pretty much got it. We're looking at a $22 million deductible that the city of St. Petersburg would have to pay out before they saw any insurance money. That's what we talk about, like insured losses. And so because they brought it down from that 100 million to that 25 million, what that means is that basically that $47 million, that's that $22 million deductible and the $25 million that they'll see from the insurance company, that leaves about $9 million of uninsured losses. And so that's in real terms what the city of St. Pete might be looking at. Now we know they've already committed about $7 million for repairs, but just earlier this week, I believe yesterday, we got some of those like damage repairs in from that assessment, and that's looking closer to $56 million.
Wow. So if we can go back a little bit, Ulises, I think you wanted to highlight the reasoning for lowering the insurance coverage by the city, correct?
Yeah, because it seems like, I mean, it was Murphy's Law. You have it for $100 million for so long, then you decide, you know what, I'm going to take it down to 25 mil, and then boom, a storm that had never happened happens. Was there any reasoning at the time that they thought this is a good idea? And if so, what was that idea?
Yeah, so there was a few to this conversation, and I'm going to take us back to March of 2024. So March is when the city of St. Pete renews their insurance policy. So this conversation has happened this year. It happened last year as well. And essentially the reason for dropping the insurance coverage specifically for the Tropicana Field, I mean, to be frank, was to find places to save money. So the city of St. Pete generally has drastically increase the amount of property insurance they pay. I mean, when we look at, where St. Pete is, where Pinellas County is, and our more active hurricane seasons, it makes sense that they're paying more for property insurance. But based on what the models were showing, they said it would take a 1 in a 250-year storm to reach $39 million in damage to the stadium. And they crunched the numbers, found that they could save about $275,000. That's $250,000 or $1 billion, in premiums. And they made that risk assessment. But it certainly was brought up that it was a risk. I mean, the Tropicana Field roof itself came up in that meeting. I mean, watching it back now in, November, knowing what's happened, I mean, it just did not age well. There was a point where Ed Montanari, who serves on that committee, pointed out, this is an aging roof. Like, how do insurers feel about that? I mean, city council members chuckled and giggled, and And it was explicitly said, like, yeah, insurers don't really know how to feel about this roof. I mean, other stadiums have been impacted by storms across the country, none quite like this, and none that's quite this old. So there's still questions about what the insurers are going to do. I mean, just because the repair costs have come in or the estimates have come in, I mean, there's still questions about, what the age of this roof was, whether the dome will be restored the way that it is now. I mean, it's a huge question mark right now that I think a lot of residents, baseball fans alike are really watching to see what happens.
You mentioned the 275,000 premium payments. Is that an annual savings or a monthly savings that they were calculating?
That was an annual premium savings. Yep. So now looking at potentially paying out millions, and those may be from funds that are taxpayer dollars. I mean, that's kind of the difference in, they saved in the short term, but now long term, we had that 250-year storm, and now we've got those big dollar amounts hanging over their head.
So just kind of a general question here. The person that led the charge for lowering these premiums and changing the plan around, I believe it's the risk manager of the city, Blaise Mazzola. Do I have that correct?
In part, yes.
Okay,
So
he's in part.
Yep. So he's going to be kind of like the city spokesperson, this on the city's side of insurance policies, bringing that before what's called the budget and taxation committee of the city government. Now, the city has a insurance broker as well, and so in this case, that was Brown and Brown Incorporated, and the head person for the brokers that talked to the city council members, that was Tony Levine. And what they do is they sit in these budget hearings, these insurance meetings ahead of a vote in March, and they brought this proposal forward. And, it's not always offered by insurance companies to drop the level of coverage. I think it was mentioned it was one of the first times in at least a couple of years where there was even an option to lower coverage on the stadium. And this kind of just points to, if you live in Florida, if you have a house in Florida and property, that, you don't always have a lot of options with what you're paying for property insurance. Right. And so this was, cities and municipalities are also in that same boat. So this was a proposal that was brought with excitement. There was the risk pointed out about the stadium being older and the roof being older, but it was a risk they were willing to take. And now I will add that I did talk to insurance experts, because I myself I'm not an expert in insurance, but I asked, what happens? Is there like legal recourse that happens because the city, takes recommendations and hears these proposals about what to do. And now it seems like, well, it is the case that the city's on the hook for these repairs if they want, for instance, the Rays to play in the next 2 years at the Trop. And I was told that, there is cases where this could end up in a civil lawsuit. I mean, to reclaim some damages. Now, we haven't seen that action yet, and I don't know that we would, but I thought that was an interesting point,
Yeah, I guess I was just curious on if city council or the public at large was using the city's risk manager and the consulting firm as scapegoats for, well, look where we're at in the situation now, or that really hasn't, I don't know if that's materialized at all throughout these meetings of looking back and saying, why'd you let us do this at the end of the day?
That is something I'm going to be looking for. And that's also why, knowing that these situations can end up in the courtroom is such an important thing to watch for too. I haven't heard much from the city. I mean, there hasn't been a lot of public statements made, except that I know Mayor Ken Welch recently did make a statement about just their, conviction and making sure that the stadium does get repairs. But besides that, there hasn't been much, retrospection about what happened, especially pointing back to March. I think that we'll definitely have some of those conversations as we get closer to, renewing insurance coverage. So getting closer to April of next year, of course, also closer to when our season will start. So yes. I think that there's a lot to watch for in the coming months.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. It's a one-stop shop. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Again, that's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Absolutely. Yeah. A lot to be considered. And as far as the citizenry and the public in general, have you reached out or received any inquiries from them on their thoughts on these possible expenditures of, hey, you might be putting X million dollars into a stadium that is going to get, theoretically demolished in a couple of years, when there are other infrastructure issues and social issues to take care of throughout the city, especially with Milton and all the other hurricanes that have come through. I didn't know if there's more people banging the drum of like, maybe public financing of sports teams isn't such a good idea after all.
That's a really good question. It's not something that I've really had a pulse on for this particular topic or this angle. However, I mean, in my day-to-day, I cover cost of living issues and affordability, and I can tell you that I'm fairly confident that tenants advocates groups will be at city council as these decisions start actually making it to some regular hearings. I mean, we've really been in a standstill until, fairly recently, when this initial assessment report came out of the damages. In October, it was really the only news we had was that an insurance claim had been filed. But now, as some things come into focus and it appears that the city is game to get this stadium back into place, I would not be surprised if tenant advocate groups in particular are a thorn in the side of the city, saying, you can dish out these millions of dollars for this stadium when there's an entire gas plant redevelopment proposal that's set in place that's not just, public financed sports stadiums, but it's also having promised all of these affordable housing units. I mean, I think it's just going to play out in a way where it's going to be easy to see where some priorities lie. I'll leave it at that.
Taking that citizenry complaints or perspective, plus I know that the assessment is very recent with these numbers, so there's a lot more to digest in the coming days and weeks. But what's your gauge whether the city is going to lean towards, yes, we're going to spend this money so the Rays can play 2 or 3 more seasons in Tropicana Field? What's your lean right now?
Yeah, so to be honest, I have not read the entire 400-something report that details the damages that have happened in Tropicana Field Stadium.
400 pages of that. It's not as easy to read as 400 pages of Harry Potter. I completely agree. It's not the same.
Yeah, not quite as easy. But I know that there's $55.7 million of damages, and the roof alone was about $23 million. And so, I mean, it will depend on what happens with the insurance, but they've already committed $6.5 million toward repairs. So that leaves, about $50 million that they're going to be on the hook for. And, I really have not talked to any city officials about which way they are leaning. So this is, just speculation as a person who lives in the area. But, I think that there's a lot that is hanging on the perception of the Rays staying here, the perception of the deal going through. And by that, I mean the entire redevelopment proposal that Mayor Ken Welch has really made his baby throughout his leadership so far. And I think that, with city budgets, we're talking billions of dollars, not necessarily millions. And in the grand scheme of things, I wonder if city leaders might not think it's a drop in the bucket to keep the long-term, lifetime of the Tampa Bay Rays here in St. Pete and preserve the integrity of that redevelopment plan.
Right. Now, another issue at play here is Pinellas County commissioners. They want to have their say as well in some of this. And the big question is where the Rays going to play in 2025. Has there been any indication from City Council at this point of, hey, we'd still like to see them in Pinellas County, be it at Al Lang Stadium or Baycare Ballpark or Dunedin, wherever it may be, or have they not even really touched that issue as they're focused on so many other things, in particular, the Trop roof and getting the facility up to par for hopefully the next couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, I know with Pinellas County, some of the headline issues have been delays with the bonds going through, which again ties into the redevelopment plan. And I know they do want to have their say and maybe where the Rays play. I will say, having covered, the damage to the Trop probably about a month in now, Mayor Ken Welch coming out and saying that, he wants the Trop to be open by the 2026 season, 2025 season, excuse me. I mean, that really does change things. I don't know if there's another great alternative. I haven't really followed that much, but unfortunately with a lot of sports stadiums, politics, there's a lot of this person saying something, someone else saying something, and you kind of have to wait to see when dirt turns or what, when there's commitment there. So I'm not sure if I answered your question, but I think I don't necessarily know, but I'm going to be watching to see for official statements and actions.
Right. Understood. Now, with all of this, couple other quick questions here. So for 2025, do you have any idea of where you think the Rays might play? I mean, it seems like the Rays have been silent through all this, which is not really done well with the elected officials. I think they want to see them at the table and kind of work together on finding solutions. But any kind of inkling on where they're going to be in 2025? And I know there's a whole situation with the bonds as well. Like Ulises and I have been talking about on the show, is a new stadium even going to get built? So near term and long term, what do you think all happens with the Tampa Bay Rays and playing in Tampa Bay?
Yeah, short term, I'm not sure, which alternatives they really have in mind. To be honest, I'm more looking at the long term of, will the 2028 redevelopment proposal, is this going to be something that throws that into limbo? So unfortunately don't have an answer for the short-term things. I know that the Rays have been, not put out an official statement. I think that a lot of times the, cities and the franchises and the sports stadiums, they kind of look to each other. And when you put something out there, then the fan base gets on board and it's unfortunately very political. So I don't know what's going to happen in the short term. I know that the bonds being held up on the county level is something that we have to keep an eye on, because that could become a bigger issue with the gas plant redevelopment. And then there's the question of, if this gets slowed down, and the Rays don't have a place to play in 2028, I mean, is there a renegotiation that's going to be in our future that we're going to have to cover? I mean, this has been a notoriously drawn out process. I mean, even before, Welch was mayor, there was a whole nother redevelopment plan that was scrapped. And I think a lot of people are on the edge of their seat wondering if this is going to be, a repetition of the past, or if we're going to be able to pull through and, really turn dirt on this new stadium. So that's all I've got for that.
No, that's perfect. And you mentioned previously some of the tenant groups coming out and maybe attending some city council meetings, but has there also been a push for, because I know there were some issues with the water system and the sewer system, is that also a major issue that the city council is talking about, and how we're going to have enough funding to make it all work? Because at the end of the day, it's great to have a new ballpark and an old ballpark that gets repaired so you can play baseball games in it, but people need to be able to frankly, flush their toilets and use tap water for various reasons. Because I know there's been a lot of talk about the St. Petersburg infrastructure and how that's going to be handled and able to work as the community grows and grows and grows.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really important point. And it's, I mean, something I will say is it's not something that's necessarily unique to the city of St. Pete. I mean, I'm covering something very similar this week in the city of Tampa, where there's, finite funds that are meant for community redevelopment or infrastructure needs or housing needs. And, they come from taxpayer dollars, and there's always going to be this conversation of, how come that can be allocated here when we need money here? And there's, I think a lot of times after a natural disaster, during hurricane relief, I mean, when there is a big publicly funded city-owned stadium that's, the roof is still not on there, and people are able to drive by and see every day. And, it really brings to the top of their mind, what their city government does and where their priorities are. And I think a lot of people are really tuned in right now to local government to see where their taxpayer dollars are going. I mean, I think they're all very valid concerns, and I don't know what might happen, but as a journalist, I get excited seeing that people are turned in enough to come to public comment and to, tell their council members where they want that money to go. I'm not sure which decision is the right one, but seeing taxpayers engaged in where their taxpayer dollars are going is a good start.
SelectQuote is one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years experience, helping over 2 million customers find over $700 billion in coverage since 1985. SelectQuote's licensed insurance agents work for you to tailor a life insurance policy for your individual needs in as little as 15 minutes. You invest so much time to take care of yourself and to be the healthiest, best version of you. Well, SelectQuote's exclusive policies can reward that effort. And these policies are more affordable than you might think. You could get coverage for up to $1 million for as little as $20 per month. So don't waste any more time here. Head over to selectquote.com and a licensed insurance agent will call you right away with the right policy for your life and your budget. SelectQuote, they shop, you save. Get the right life insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/locked on. One more time for the audience out there, that is selectquote.com/locked on.
Definitely. What about if we were to make a pie chart on all of the issues that City Council is reviewing at the moment? Is it fair to speculate that the Trop has the biggest slice of the pie? And if not, then what is it?
In terms of city of St. Pete and what the things that they're dealing with right now, I would say that getting their insurance claim in and trying to find ways to, yes, fix property is a huge chunk of what they're talking about right now. I think that beyond that, it also is housing is always a big issue. It's especially, I think, acute right now, and it's very visible. People that are renters that, there was that scramble just to find new housing after the hurricanes, and some people are still without housing. I mean, that's another thing that's very visible right now. And then infrastructure needs. I mean, we had, to your point about sewage needs, there was a lot of investment in St. Petersburg sewage and water and storm drains in the past, couple decades. And we saw, a better result after these couple of hurricanes. We didn't have sewage in the streets to that same extent as we did in past decades. But I think that, after hurricanes and natural disasters, it's very common for people to look to their leaders, and whether or not they're receiving state or federal funds, they're still going to be looking to their local leaders for individual assistance, for things that rally everybody together, like the Tampa Bay Rays, and that make people feel part of community. These are the things on everybody's minds right now.
Yeah.
And the budget was already decided for this fiscal year months ago, but right now people are going to be thinking about where that money is going, how it's serving them, maybe showing up and telling their city leaders what they like about that, what they don't like about that. And people are really engaged.
Now, talking about how people are engaged, how have you been able to kind of cross over? Because from what I've read online, it's not like you're a sports journalist. So how do these things combine in your day to day? And tell folks what you do on a regular basis.
Certainly, yeah. So definitely not a sports journalist. Can't talk much about any statistics or stuff like that for our players. But what I can tell you is that I started looking into some of the details and the nitty gritty of this insurance policy for the Tropicana Field. One, because I've lived here most of my life, and it was shocking to me, like most of the world, that this roof was shredded that night of October 9th. And I was curious what the city might be going through, filing claims, cleaning up, trying to keep their property from further damage, and how that might relate to what people were doing in their own backyards and in their garages and with their Airbnbs. And so I started just trying to find some of those public records and asking the city what they were doing, because it's just was on everybody's mind. Beyond that, what I do day to day is really look at anything that touches your budget as somebody who lives and works in the Tampa Bay region. And I try to put that into context with how we're doing economically. So I'm really kind of a consumer economics reporter. And so that can drop me into sports very easily. It can drop me into city government, certainly, but also, the grocery store, whether you're looking for housing, whether you're picking out your next meal. Really, I cover anything and everything, but can't really talk too much shop about what's happening in the actual games.
Right. Now that's all good. And a follow-up to that, in your time working for WUSF, what has been the most, besides the whole Trop situation, the most interesting or intriguing story from your perspective, be it local government, human interest, crime, whatever it is, general assignment, just something that really sticks out to you of like, oh, that was really cool to dive deep into and get a gauge on and report on it?
Certainly. I really did enjoy some of my reporting on the gas plant redevelopment. I know we've talked a lot about that already. But something that might be good to share here is that I also got to work with John Hopkins middle school students. So that's over in St. Petersburg, actually right across the street from Tropicana Field.
Yeah.
And I actually got to work with a handful of middle schoolers who interviewed firsthand former residents of the gas plant district. So before it was raised, leveled, and, before the 1990s Tropicana Field Stadium was built. And so that was really amazing because we know that kids are smart and creative and have, the most interesting off the cuff questions, but to watch it in real time and put a recorder in their hands was really cool. And we got to cross publish that. It was called Growing Up in the Gas Plant District. And that's also available on our website at WUSF.org. But that's definitely a standout series that I worked on.
I think it's really cool that the way that you speak about all of this, and I know that you've said it already, but if folks didn't get it, you are from the area. So you've kind of grown up with all these issues and the Trop as a landmark. How does it feel to be working in the city that you grew up in and seeing all these different scenarios pop up and then you have to cover them?
Yeah, everyone always asks me that, like, how is it to be a reporter in your hometown? And it definitely gives me an edge up geographically. I know where I'm driving most of the time, but I gotta say, being a journalist, and I mean what you guys do too, talking to new people every day, even if you're in the city where you grew up, every day I feel like I'm learning something new or discovering something new about this area. And it definitely gives it a new sense of community. I mean, there's so much to cover. There's so many people with different backgrounds and different stories and experiences. And it's just, I'm really grateful to serve the community in this way. But I guess I would just say it's been really cool.
Awesome. All right, let's know we got a couple more moments here. Let's get to know Gabrielle a little bit. We've got a couple quick hitting questions. We usually do this with a lot of the guests that we have on. Ulises, you want to lead it off?
Yes, let's get it going with it easy. Fastball down the middle. Favorite sports, favorite team. Don't feel obligated to say the one that we all have just spoken about for 27 minutes.
Okay. I will say I actually grew up playing tennis in the area. And so I'm a big Rafa fan, I got to say, because he just retired too. I grew up watching him. I got to go with, Rafael Nadal.
Nice. That's got a smile to Ulises because his sister is actually a national champion tennis player. Little plug.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
That's dope.
So I grew up with tennis, and I saw Nadal in the Miami Open like in 2005 when he was like 17, 18. And then he just became like a legend. So yeah, I'm with you. That's a great answer, Kev. I know that wouldn't have been yours, Kev, but I think that's a great answer.
No, yeah, not a big tennis guy. But all right, hidden talent, if you have one, what would you consider that to be? Besides tennis, I guess.
Okay, sticking with the sports theme, actually, this is usually my fun fact in Spaces. I grew up in high school. I was a pole vaulter. I don't know if I can still pole vault, but I'm going to say that's my hidden talent.
Nice.
That is a hidden talent. Karaoke go-to song.
Oh, man, I feel like a woman.
All right. Good choice. Yep. Favorite St. Pete or Tampa area restaurant? What's your go-to?
Oh, that's a really good question.
And you can list out a couple if you want to.
Yeah. This is I grew up in the New Tampa area, so this is an oldie but a goodie. I'm a sushi cafe person.
Oh my gosh. That is Ulises, have you ever been there?
I think that it's the one near where it was Movieco, right? By that Chipotle.
Yep. It's nearby there. It's been it's family owned. It's been there. Since I grew up here. So going on, at least
that is literally my wife's favorite restaurant. That's crazy. Sushi.
Wow.
Good spot.
There you go.
And another one maybe on St. Pete's side.
Ooh, okay. On St. Pete's side. I got to do some exploring, but I'm a sucker for the pier, just being out on the St. Pete pier. Yep.
That's nice. Last one that I've got, Kev, maybe you have another one. What you're currently binging on Netflix?
Currently binging on Netflix. I have just gotten into Suits, actually. So watch out. I might go get a law degree.
There we go. Yeah. Sometimes you don't have to have a law degree to be a lawyer.
If you're Mike, you don't have to. Yeah. That's
if you're Mike Ross, you don't need to know that. Yeah.
There you go. Or
good choice.
Become a princess. Who knows?
Yeah. Last one I've got. Do you have a favorite book, novel? What you like to read, who you like to read besides hard news and so forth.
Besides news, that was the key word there.
Yeah.
What is my go-to? I just picked up Game of Thrones. I've watched it, but I haven't been reading it. So I'm actually now reading it right now. It's been my good read that has gotten me back into some fiction reading. So
very cool.
Those are like 1,000 pages, right?
Yep, it's right up there with the damage assessment report I got to read soon.
That's awesome. Gabriella, thank you so much for your time and for being so candid with us. How can people follow your work and how can they reach you?
Thank you guys, first of all. And you can follow my work at WUSF.org. You can find my author profile there at Gabriella Paul. And while you're there, check out all the great work of my colleagues too.